You're listening to Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. Hello, and welcome to another episode of Overdoing It, where our team of library workers dish about their latest reads, views, and passions, alongside fascinating conversations with local luminaries. I'm your host, Lauren Walker, Director of the Coventry Public Library, and my pronouns are she, her. Let's dive in and see who my guest is today.
Hello, my name is Allison Horricks. I currently live in Lincoln, Rhode Island. I'm a historian, I'm a park ranger, and I co-authored a book on American Girl, and I'm a longtime library user in Rhode Island. Those are my proper credentials for today.
Those are great credentials. Well, welcome to the show, Allison. A little bit later, we'll talk about Allison's career, her book, Dolls of Our Lives, and her connection to American Girl. But before we get to that, let's start out, as we always do, with what have you been reading and watching?
Yes, I love this question. I am currently almost done with a great book called The Foursome by Christina Baker Klein. She wrote Orphan Train, among other things. It's a historical fiction imagining of the relationship of Chang and Ang, the famous conjoined twins of the 19th century, and life with their wives from one of the wives' point of view. So that is what I am currently finishing, along with the audiobook, a few different audiobooks, but that is the main thing that I am reading right now.
That sounds really interesting.
It's good. It's very good.
Nice. I've been reading this book called The Bookmakers, A History of the Book in 18 Lives by Adam Smith. Smith is spelled with a Y. And exactly what it says. It tells the history of the book through the lives of important people who were instrumental in like the evolution of the book. So I think the first one has to do with illuminated manuscripts. There's a couple of chapters about printers. There's one chapter about Benjamin Franklin, of course. Can't make a book about printers without including Benjamin Franklin. And some people who were involved in making paper and developing like paper as we know it today and all sorts of things like that. So I only have an hour left of the audiobook, so I'm almost finished with it. And it's been really interesting. I mean, if you like history and you like books and you like, books as like physical objects in addition to like reading them, then I can highly recommend it for sure.
I like that. That sounds good.
Yeah. And what have you been watching anything good?
I'm worried. I don't know if this is like celebrated or taboo here. I do watch Real Housewives of Rhode Island because if something is about Rhode Island and it's public and national, I'm going to consume it and at least be interested in it. I've been dipping into the Chicago season of Married at First Sight. And I'm finding, gosh, I want to love that show so much. And I liked earlier iterations, and it's just very challenging to like that show. But I've been watching some documentaries, but really summer is less of a TV time for me unless there's something like Real Housewives where I want to know at the same time as everyone else. But those have been two of them. Been dipping a bit into Widow's Bay, which is on Apple TV, trying to see if I like that. But really Real Housewives is my only like weekly commitment right now.
That's fair. What is Widow's Bay about? I haven't heard about that.
It's a little bit supernatural, and a friend recommended it to me because one of the first scenes is set in a little historical society on this kind of fictional island, and a mayor is trying to court a New York Times journalist who's going to write a travel piece about the place. And of course you can tell like this is not going to go well because there is a mystery unfolding. And the guide in the historical society is trying to tell him kind of like real harrowing facts about the island. And of course the politician doesn't want him or her rather, to say any of that. So that's kind of what hooked me in. I don't really know what it's about yet, and that's okay because I'm
Fair
just
enough.
dipping into it. Married at First Sight is, of course, exactly what it sounds like. Strangers get married and then decide if that was a good idea. And unfortunately, it's now almost never a good idea on that show, but we try, right?
Yeah, I have seen Married at First Sight, and it did hook me more than I thought it would. But I think after watching it not work out enough times, I was like, okay, I can't keep watching this.
It's like many things, it started with people who really did think this was a good idea. And then it has evolved into people who want to be on TV, which is fine if it's good TV. But sometimes the overall product, I think, kind of suffers from that. Like, you do have to actually believe this is a good idea to make good
Right.
TV.
Yeah. What are you thinking about Real Housewives of Red Island? I haven't seen it yet.
I like it. So I was really not excited by the trailer and really was kind of anxious because I didn't know sort of, on a national stage, what would this look like? What would this kind of say about Rhode Island? And I had actually never watched the show. I had never watched a season of the show before. I knew it was a lot of kind of like glamour and fighting and family and sort of like friend dynamics. I like it a lot, actually. I think part of what's fun if you are local is watching the creative editing of panning from like a really gorgeous scene in Patuxent to College Hill to some other place in East Greenwich. Like, they do a lot of interesting editing around Newport, kind of wealthier communities in Rhode Island. But I also think it's done a decent job of kind of showcasing different areas, and it featured my local pizza place, so I kind
Oh,
of feel I
fun.
have to watch, right? So, how do I not watch if people from around the world are now seeing this place? So for me, it was more curiosity. I wanted to see kind of who would get featured, and there is a doll lover on the cast, so she has kind of hooked me in.
Nice.
So there's enough for me. Certainly, I won't say it's for everybody, but it's funny as well.
Nice. Yeah, I've been meaning to check it out. I don't think my husband wants to watch it, so it's one of
Fair.
those like if normally when I'm watching TV, it's like at the end of the day and we're both home and we're watching something together. So it's going to be one of those like when he's out of the house doing something, that's when I'll watch it.
It's
Um,
rainy day TV. It's
yeah.
glamour shots of beaches. It's very expensive lunches. And I think season one of these types of shows, not having watched a ton of this particular kind of thing with the franchises, but the people maybe aren't as guarded because they haven't had the full exposure. So to me, it's always a little bit more interesting.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I have to ask, what's your local pizza place?
So it's Angelo's Pizza. So there's Angelo's
Okay.
Pizza Palace and there is an Express. And one of the Real Housewives is connected through marriage to Angelo's. And it's very, very
Oh.
good. This is not sponsored content, of course, through the library, but it's just funny to see a place that you go to all the time and have the lunch special kind of be featured in this way, and to try to figure out, okay, they're showing this street from this place and then they're panning over. I know they're actually panning over to a different town. So if that's
Right.
of interest to you, and even if you don't like the other dynamic of the relationships, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I do like catching that, and anytime there's like a movie filmed in Rhode Island, and they
Yes.
do that kind of like cut to, and I'm like, that's a totally different town. Like, there's no way they just walk down the street to there. But um, obviously, I know that that's how movies work. It's just
Yes.
enjoyable to be like in the know and to be able to point it out.
Yes, I kind of suffered through Ella McKay just out of pure devotion to Rhode Island, and really wanted to like feel that pride. And then I was like, okay, well, I'll watch this. So,
I haven't seen that one yet either, but
okay.
did you not like it? But you liked seeing Rhode Island in it?
It was filmed in the State House, which was really, really exciting. And I don't think I knew what to expect. And some of the actors were just kind of like their wackiest versions of themselves. So it was kind of interesting for that. Honestly, if people are getting to film things in Rhode Island and it's getting like good work and like good exposure to Rhode Island, that's cool. It was set kind of around the time of the housing crisis in the early 2000s, kind of like Obama era. And I think, gosh, that's just hard to transport to. So it's less a comment on anything that was involved in the film so much as, you know, certain things you think, I'm not sure I want to watch that right now. It's like COVID novels. I'm really
Yeah.
selective about that. So less a comment on art or artists and more just like topic, I think.
Yeah, that's fair. That actually segues a little bit into what I've been watching. I just finished the newest season of Four Seasons on Netflix. Have you seen
Oh,
that?
I've seen the first season, which I loved very much. Yeah.
The second season, there's an episode that kind of does like a little flashback to COVID. And I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, they're, they're talking about how do you have home tests? Like, no one has access to these. And I was like, oh my God, like, I forgot that there was a point where it was like you couldn't get tested at all, and then it was like you have to go to a specific place to get a test, and it was like you're feeling terrible and you have to drive to like this not your local CVS, because it was never the most convenient CVS. It was like two towns over at this specific window of time is when you can get tested to be able to know if you should or should not return to work. And yeah, I totally forgot about that, and it was just funny to think about that time period as now being like historical fiction in TV shows and books and stuff. Yeah.
There was a brief window where the old Ann and Hope building in Cumberland was a testing site, and I feel like that is just like a quintessential Rhode Island experience. Like I got
Yeah.
something put very far up my nose to be tested for COVID
Oh
inside
my
the
God.
old, you know, Ann and Hope building. But one of my favorite authors is Elizabeth Strout, and she has written like quite a number of novels now, I feel, in the past, only few years, where COVID is kind of a central plot point or a sort of central actor. And she's done it differently in each of them. And she keeps going back to that well. And I admire her for it. But there are times where you just don't want to, like
Yeah.
that among kind of like Obama era optimism. I have to really be in the mood to try to like re enter that space from nearly 20 years ago.
Yeah. Agreed. I another thing we've been kind of watching ongoing is we're binge watching Gilmore Girls,
Oh,
and
nice.
there are certain things that they'll say that it's just like it transports me right back to the early 2000s. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not in a great way. We were just watching an episode where they like made a disparaging comment about Britney Spears as a mother, and I was just like, oh,
Yeah.
Brittany, I'm so sorry that this is what society was like at that time. And everyone, it just, now we know in retrospect, hey, be nicer to women and consider their side of things when the tabloids are printing all kinds of things.
I have still never sat and watched Gilmore Girls. I feel
Oh,
like
wow.
I've absorbed some of enough episodes and I know kind of the central characters. You know, you don't hand like an espresso to a puppy. That's what Gilmore Girls feels like to me. Like my brain is often at the speed of their speech, and so I see them talking and I think maybe like the reverse of an audiobook, I'll slow it down and that will be calming to me. I think
Yeah.
that's an option I might have to pursue to watch that show.
Yeah, I'd be interested. I mean, because my husband never watched it before, and it's interesting. Like, for me, I think a lot of the enjoyment comes from the nostalgia of having already seen it and having
Yeah.
not watched it in a long time. Um, so it's interesting to see that someone can still enjoy it, like, even though there are things that are very early 2000s about it, or there are like cultural references sometimes that we don't even get, even though we were alive at that time. We're like, were people talking about that? What are they
Yeah.
referencing there? So yeah, it's interesting, I think, to think about someone who's never seen it before watching it now with a modern lens.
Do you like the Laurie Gilmore books? That is a nom de plume that's actually kind of a coy reference to like the Gilmore Girls type world and aesthetic. She wrote the Pumpkin Spice Cafe.
I know who she is, but I haven't read the books.
They're very charming. They're very low. That was one of my recent reads. She just had her sixth book come out, which is the Daisy Chain Flower Shop, which is like
Hmm.
yet another like not economically viable business in this main street town where everyone owns their own business and doesn't really seem to work and has like endless disposable income. But it's lovely. Like that, I think that show, or that series rather, kind of fills the void that that show might fill for some people. And
Yeah,
she
that
chose
makes
that name.
sense.
Yeah.
Because that sounds very much like Stars Hollow, the town
Yes.
that it takes. We always, Nate and I have been making endless jokes about how like you can buy a house for like $10 in Stars Hollow. Like a single mom who works as a maid in an inn somehow is like buying a home, and it's like a beautiful Victorian home.
Oh, everyone has
So yeah,
property. It's walkable. There's references that it's on a public transportation line into Boston. So, I mean, that like further stretches it to just being completely incredible. And there's, you know, like 13 or 14 like hetero people at any one time in the community, and they've all found each other, you know.
right.
And it's like a perfect alignment. You know, or someone who like loves pets but hasn't been able to have one, a puppy literally like arrives at their work site, you know. So if you
Perfect.
like that kind of thing, that is for you.
Nice. I feel like I have to mention also because I just watched this the other day and it was so much better than I thought it was going to be, on a totally different like plane. Have you seen The Bride yet, or were
I
you
don't
planning to?
No, I don't think so. What's this?
So it came out like somewhat recently. It's now like you can stream it. I think I watched it on HBO Max, or are we calling it HBO Max anymore? I don't even know. It's directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal and it's starring Christian Bale as Frankenstein's monster, who goes by Frank in the movie, and Jessie Buckley, who plays his bride, quote unquote. Um, and I don't want to like give too much away because if anyone listening is going to go see it, I felt like I was glad that I went into it not knowing the premise, because the premise is a little far-fetched, I'll say. And if I thought too much about the premise, then I would have been like, I don't want to watch this movie. But
Yeah.
instead, like the trailer, I thought did not do the movie justice at all. I saw the trailer, I was like, this is probably not going to be a very good movie, but the cast is so good that I want to give it a shot, and I'm so glad that I did. It was really weird and surreal. Um, and like I said, like the premise is a bit much, but the acting is so good that it carried it. And I just, if you like weird movies that, you know, maybe the average person would not like it, but there's something about it that is like very like artistic, and I don't know, I really liked it. I thought it was like this interesting niche film, and the trailer made it look kind of like it was like a Bonnie and Clyde, and it's not like that at all. So it's really like a love story, but not not a traditional love story in any sense of the word, and more about, I think more about like feminism and freedom to be whoever you want to be, from like the point of view of like the quote unquote the bride. So yeah, I just, having watched it recently, I was like, I have to mention this on the pod because it's a really unique movie, and I think probably a lot of people are not going to watch it because of the trailer, like I almost didn't. So that's my weird recommendation.
I will check that out because I find, you know, I used to be really big into going to kind of like small cinemas, and not like truly sincerely, like not in a snobby way, in a, it was cheap, right? Like there were eras where like that was cheaper. And I'm
Right.
not great at picking or seeking out new interesting media. And the algorithms that know me kind of know what I will fall back into. And I need recommendations because they have set me down a path where now I'm not really seeing like super interesting things. And I liked walking up to a place and saying, okay, I have, you know, like an opportunity to see something for $7. I'll see anything. And I don't really do
Right.
that anymore, to be I don't know that most people do that anywhere anymore. And so I love recommendations that kind of push me into a new comfort zone. I don't tend to do that. I watched last week the Pamela A Love Story, the documentary about Pamela Anderson made with
Hmm.
her children. Like that was super fascinating. And I always like watching new documentaries that kind of give me something to think about. But in terms of film, I find myself watching a lot of the same things. I watched Hereditary earlier in this past month, and then my algorithm was like, okay, now we have something else to kind of work with. You know, we see
Right.
that you liked that, so I'm always trying to push it so it doesn't just show me something that's kind of more comfortable.
Yeah, I can recommend The Bride. I told Nate it reminded me of something that I would have stumbled upon back when I used to order Netflix in the mail.
Right,
And I
right.
would like work on my queue, and it was like, oh, if you watch this, you might like this. And I found a lot of really random, like indie movies that way. And this felt like that, even though it's like a big, famous cast and directed by Maggie Gyllenhaal. It felt like kind of like a niche indie movie. So, um, yeah, highly recommend.
I've never heard of it, so which doesn't mean much, but you know, is it's not like it's not Toy Story 5, right? So it's not
Right.
everywhere.
Great. Well, to segue into our main conversation, of course, we know each other because we both used to work as guides at the Newport Mansions.
Yes.
So fill me in on what you've been up to for the past like 10-ish years about how you went from Breaker's Guide to podcaster, national park ranger, and author.
Yeah, so it has been, I think, I worked for the National Park Service the past 10 years. So I started in 2016. And in between Newport and I'm now in the Blackstone River Valley. I finished my PhD in history. So that is my background. And in about, I think, 2019 is when I started podcasting. And so, together with my co host, Mary Mahoney, we had a show called Dolls of Our Lives. And that ran for just over 5 years. And that focused on kind of like a pop culture retrospective analysis of American Girl. So, of historical dolls from characters of historical fiction, talking about kind of the early characters that were created by a company that ran as the Pleasant Company, talking about American history, pop culture, all those things. It was a little bit more coherent than what I just described. But really, we got to talk to people who loved American Girl as kids, and then it expanded into adult collectors who maybe didn't grow up with American Girl, or young collectors who are growing into American Girl. And I've worked for Lowell National Historical Park, which is up in Lowell, Massachusetts. And I've more recently been at Blackstone River Valley, which is the area from Providence, Rhode Island to Worcester, Massachusetts. And I do industrial history. So, in American Girl terms, what Nellie is forced to do for about a book. Like, if that makes sense to you, when Nellie goes to work at the factory, that's what I talk about every day. So,
I forgot about Nellie and the
yes.
factory.
Yes. In the film, the Samantha film set around 1904, she has a horrific accident in the factory. Or sorry, one of her colleagues has a horrific accident. So I do a much older mill, circa 1793, but same type of idea of child labor.
And what got you interested enough in American Girl to start a podcast and write a book?
When I was younger, I loved American Girl, but it was definitely just kind of a solitary thing. I loved my dolls, collecting, I loved reading all of the books. And when I was in college, in graduate school, it was one of those topics that would come up, right? Just as social media was getting bigger, people would talk kind of in this shorthand, which character did you like? Which era were you most interested in? What were kind of these like quirky things, again, before you could share it with people really online as a young person of the 90s that you loved. And quickly found that there was a lot of people who wanted to kind of think about these really formative books from an adult perspective. So the goal was never to just sort of kind of enshrine these books and say they were perfect or to critique them, but to say, now that you're an adult, right, if you reread this book, written in the 90s, set in another era, kind of what can we learn from it today? So we covered all of the historical books and did a lot of offshoots, such as the Dear America books, all those types of things. But really, it came from wanting to kind of talk to other people roughly in our age cohort at first. What did you like about this? What was interesting? And what does a historian think about it from that perspective as well? So that's really kind of how it started.
That's very cool. And you mentioned that you collected the dolls. Which dolls did you have?
As a kid, I first got Molly, who is set in 1944. I also was very delighted to receive an Addie doll, a Josefina doll, and a Felicity doll. I did not have Bitty Baby or kind of like the other offshoots, but I very, very much loved those dolls. I now have, I won't call it a doll room, but it is more than a doll closet. I have quite a lot of things that are sort of contained, like for their own safety. I have a whole area of just doll things. So I've always owned quite a few of the books, but now as an adult collector, I don't really acquire super often, but I own a lot of the stuff. Like of the early 90s stuff, I won't say I own everything. I own all the books and I own like 20 dolls, but I don't own everything.
Wow.
That's,
So 20 American Girl dolls
yes,
or okay. Wow,
which
that's
is a
really
lot.
cool.
It's a lot of dolls. Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a whole room though, you said.
So they are contained and part of that is just trying to kind of keep them like reasonably managed. They do take up a
Mhm.
fair amount of room. So I have dolls like for the past year I've had a doll in my back seat. Why? It delights me. I think it's cute, it's fun. I like to look at a doll tucked in the back seat. I have multiple dolls in like my bedroom. I have dolls in my office at work. I have dolls all over. I have dolls in my home office, living room. They're everywhere. But there's sort of like there needs to be a context. Like so I have a doll whose leg strings are not very strong, so she can't stand erect. So I have her sitting in my office and she's wearing a mill worker's costume and I feel like that's a really good use for her. But between the minis and everything, like they could take over a fairly, good amount of space. But I like to have them where I can sort of access them, but not like taking over my life. I'll put it that way.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
I just had Josefina, but she was like brand new. She was like the newest doll, so I was very excited that she was my doll, and I still have her, but she's definitely not contained in any sort of a collector's way. I think a while back I wanted to make sure that I still had her, and I found her in like the bin of all of my old childhood things, and she was not well placed in there or
Yeah.
anything. So I definitely like gave her hair a little brush and I braided it so that it wouldn't get tangled again. And then I put her back with all the Beanie Babies so they could continue hanging out.
I still have a trove of Beanie Babies. I have a fair amount of those things. I collected more as an adult while doing the podcast because sometimes I wanted the experience of owning the doll. And we started pre COVID, and during COVID, a lot of people reconnected with childhood interests and the secondary market and the main market coming out of Mattel. Mattel caters so much, as many companies do now, to adult buyers and collectors. The whole kind of economics of it has completely changed. Like it sounds already sort of like I'm waxing nostalgic for 2019, early 2020, but you could get dolls that weren't fairly common. I would get them on Marketplace for $40. And now there are ones that have become kind of perceived as more coveted, or people understand that they're worth a bit more. And I'll routinely see Felicity dolls that are not original, that are like late 90s for 180. That
Wow.
I mean that kind of thing was probably also happening in 2019, but I think it's more visible now that there's so many people that want the originals. There are things like the clothing that cost a lot more than you would think. And these are things that, even though they were expensive when we were younger in the early 90s, they were half the price of what they are now,
Right.
secondhand. So that's changed a lot.
Yeah. And I'm sure that you've been asked this before, but do you have a favorite
Oh,
American
yeah.
Girl?
Yeah, that's not even a question. Yeah, she's like 4 feet from me. So my original Molly doll is the top tier. Like there's no one else even close. I own more Molly dolls. I own a bunch of the minis, and I bought a Molly when she was re-released, so I would have her. And I also bought my niece one of those Mollys. But my 1995 Molly, that's it, right? Like she's in a class of her own. She's in like a highly curated outfit that I've put her in. She's been to the salon, she's had doctor's appointments, like she's her own. Yeah, like that hasn't changed. I have
Nice.
others that I really like, but that no one is ever going to come close to that for me.
Molly was a good doll. I think I remember liking her books the best. Like I liked her story.
She's got a great story, and when you reread them as an adult, there are elements where once you're reading them with the distance of not being a child, of course, like they act like children. I mean, that's kind of an obvious takeaway. They're
Right.
they're designed to socialize children, and she was a little bit more kind of persnickety and like caused more chaos than I had remembered, but I latched on to her character and just adored the stories, and I loved her look. I liked her aesthetic a lot. And others have made this point, and I think it's a good one. Her being the most recent, like being 1944 and
Mhm.
released in 86, wasn't that far apart. It is
Right.
akin to a doll from the late 80s being released today, which the company has also done. So it's a closer proximity than a character who, such as Kirsten, who lives, in Minnesota in the 1840s. Like that was very foreign to me. A girl who lived in a house with a family who had a car, right? And a lot of their things looked not so different from my things. That was also part of the appeal.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think when did Kit come out? Because she was like, wasn't she like 50s or 60s maybe?
So Kit represents the Great Depression, and she is the same
Oh.
author. So she is one of Valerie Tripp's creations. A number of kind of like, I would say, not the more famous, but like beloved characters were written by her. And she was very friendly with the founder of the company, so that is part of it. She wrote Felicity, of course. Felicity is always kind of getting a lot of traction with 250. So
Yeah.
she wrote Kit as one of her later characters. It was around the time where the company was transitioning away from a 6-book model. Shortly after that, they transitioned to something called Be Forever. They're kind of longer chapter books that condense the characters' stories a bit differently. But Valerie Tripp was with the company since the beginning and still does a lot with the company. So that's over 40 years at this point.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, I forgot that that Kit was Great Depression. I don't know why I had her in my mind as after Molly, but that makes sense that Molly is kind of like the most quote unquote modern of the dolls at the time when we were kids. So,
And her
yeah.
clothing is not radically different. Like she starts the books from a fairly comfortable, I would say at least, family. And part of her story is getting exposed to people in her kind of class and socioeconomic background, how their lives change. And then her
Mhm.
life, of course, also changes during the Depression. But what she wore, she wore overalls. We
Yeah,
also wore overalls. So, it
right.
wasn't it wasn't like quite so different as a Josefina or a character like Felicity who wore something we would wear only as a costume, really.
Yeah. And so you had the podcast, you wrote the book. What was that like being an author or co-wrote the book?
Yeah, so it was definitely different. And I think, there was kind of like a short window where I think you could kind of just start a podcast and kind of break through, right? Like now, a lot of celebrities have podcasts. I love Amy Poehler. I am not Amy Poehler. It is very hard to compete, right, with someone who has the
That's fair.
machine of celebrity. And I first got into podcasts when they were literally just like an add on to your like very, very early iPhone. And I had friends who were listening to them, and I would consume them. Small, digestible ones like Memory Palace had a huge impact on me, like little short things. And Mary had the background in radio, she had the background in the tech piece. And we thought this would be an interesting way, right, to kind of connect with people we don't know. Like let's see if anybody listens. And I think you really have to start a podcast assuming that if no one ever listens to it, you're still happy with the product that you're putting out. And I always joke, I lived like underneath the TF Green airport landing at the time. So there were challenges, right?
Wow.
Like there were things that had to be overcome, and ended up really enjoying meeting people through the podcast, kind of being people who served as like a starting point. We were able to, so we got our book deal. I think it was like the week COVID became a pandemic. So that was, that had a huge role. It was meant to be really very much a travel log. The book was going to be kind of like come and travel with us as we see sites that are relevant to American Girl stories, and we will talk about the experience of like following in the footsteps. American Girl was conceived after a trip to Colonial Williamsburg. And so, of course, we knew we wanted to go there. We wanted to go to kind of all these heritage sites that connected with it. Truly, like the ink dried and COVID was declared a pandemic, like within a very short window.
Wow.
So, a lot of the book was more about, in the end, like the internet culture. And we did travel to a few places, but of course, not. And as you recall, there was a world paper shortage, not just toilet, but book paper as well. So our whole timeline very much shifted. But it was really an opportunity to take what at that point had already been years of people writing to us, sharing their story and saying, this is what American Girl meant to me, and trying to kind of get that into our contemporary record. Like, here's what a cohort of people said this meant to them. Here's why American Girl matters, and here's why it's more than just a product, right? It was kind of this cultural phenomenon, and here's what people say it meant to them. And we used the format of the original books, which is a 6-part arc, to kind of chart what that meant for a generation of people.
I love that. Well, I hope that our listeners will borrow it from the library. I know
Yes.
our library has it. I'm sure lots of them do in Rhode Island, at least. So,
Yes.
yeah, that's awesome. And speaking of writing, I have to say this is the most Rhode Island thing ever.
Yeah.
So we're in the process of scheduling an episode about the Slatersville series,
Nice.
which I've been watching on PBS. And I was looking up the filmmakers on their website and scrolling down the list, and there you were.
Yes, I am.
Apparently you were a co-writer for episodes 8 through 11. So I was wondering if you could talk about that and how you got involved in that project. I'm guessing it comes into your national parks work with the Blackstone Valley.
It does. It does. So I first worked in Blackstone Valley in 2016, and then took a permanent position in Lowell, and was fortunate to be able to come back. Absolutely loved Lowell, but wanted to work in Rhode Island as well, and was able to come back and to be part of a transition with Slater Mill. And our national park is composed of 6 different sites, one of which is Slatersville. And I got to know the filmmaker, Christian de Resendez. He would always come on tours. We got friendly. And I learned about Slatersville, and I knew that my boss was in it. Lots of people had been featured in it, and just sort of had this germ of, I'm going to be in it. I'm going to set an intention. I want to be in it. And we started collaborating, and then there was an opportunity to do some writing. And so we are actually in the process right now of writing the next episodes. And we are also releasing later this year a short on Union Village, which is another village in North Smithfield with a focus on the American Revolution. But basically just got kind of right place, right time. I love working with Christian. So we kind of ping pong off each other. And so I do kind of more contextual writing, like here's like bigger picture, what this looks like. And then he has so many years of knowledge and research and background and footage for everything. So it's super, super fun. And the first time I saw my name on it, I was like, oh, yes, co-writer. So that's, I am not a visual person. And so it's been so delightful to write something and to see what ends up being manifest in the docu-series. So more episodes are coming. Christian is lovely, and we have something else coming out soon, which is very exciting. So that's very Rhode Island. I was recently working on kind of another totally tangential side project, and someone was like, what are you doing? What like kind of strange things are you involved in? But I like the culture of heritage around here that you can kind of dabble and do different things. So
yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. I'll definitely keep an eye out for the Union Village series that you were talking about. Is that going to be on PBS as well?
yes.
Okay.
Yes. And so we are focusing on a community of Quakers during the American Revolution and kind of why they end up settling there, what the Rhode Island history of that looks like, and how the revolution tests this community. And part of it is we have some interesting stories of patriotism and war service, which kind of contradicts what we think about Quakers from that era. The Newport Quakers, I think, are better understood, better studied, more prolific from that era. So this is kind of a different perspective on Rhode Island and the war.
Very cool. And so to kind of circle back to your work for the Blackstone River Valley National Historic Park, can you talk a little bit about your work there and what you do?
Yeah, so every day is a little bit different. I do mill tours at the Old Slater Mill. People should definitely visit, open seasonally. We also do special tours year round. I do walking tours in our various communities and do a lot of different kind of research and planning around different ways that we get people out seeing the Blackstone Valley. Our story covers a wide spread of different communities with a focus on how industry developed, how workers kind of developed new forms of technology, what they did with them. And Slatersville is a great example of a mill village, but taking people out to places where there's evidence of an old canal or evidence or an actual factory that's been rehabilitated and talking about what life was like, right? Working in industry. What's really neat about it is we're not limited to one time frame. So we also do, more current work. We talk to communities about various things. So it's fun. Every day is a little bit different. In summer, we do everything from fishing and hiking tours to, your traditional research mill tour. So it's all over the place.
That's awesome. I was looking at the website the other day and I saw something very adorable, the Bark Ranger
Yes.
program.
Yes.
Do you want to tell our listeners about that?
I will say that the dog model on our website is a Coventry resident. It is my parents' dog who agreed
Oh,
to, and not a patron of your library, but like the dog does not patronize, but the family does. So Bark Ranger is short for kind of four key principles that you should keep in mind when you visit really any park, but specifically a National Park Service site. It's a reminder to bag your dog's poo, to always have them on a leash, to respect wildlife, and to know where you can go. And it's been a really effective way for parks to kind of have something adorable and effective to talk to people who really aren't sure where their dogs can be on public federal lands. So we do Bark Ranger programs in Providence, in Pawtucket, and also as part of the Washington Rochambeau National Heritage Trail. So we also have really cute little ones for cats and dogs that commemorate that pathway. And we'll do Bark Ranger meetups, and you can also write to us or visit to get one of your Bark Ranger badges.
very cool. Yeah, I saw that and I was like, we live in Cumberland, so I said we'll have to go to Pawtucket with our dogs
Yes,
and get them certified as Bark Rangers.
yes, and there are places where there is a very formal ceremony, and there are many parts to it. Really, the goal, we've all been on a walking trail where there are things we would rather not see, whether they're bagged or unbagged. And the goal is to really kind of shift that behavior, in part because it is bad for the environment, and also because it creates a more pleasant environment. And to do that education around, there are places that people don't know they can bring a dog, and I think a lot of that has shifted in recent years, but it's very fun. There are people who collect the badges from all over the country, so they visit Rhode Island and these heritage sites just to get their badges, but end up doing a mill tour or learning about one of our mill villages, which is very cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And is there anything coming up that you'd like listeners to know about?
I would say keep an eye out for Union Village, keep an eye out for future Slatersville. Definitely just kind of, there's lots of really cool things happening in the Blackstone Valley for America 250. So keep an eye out for all of those types of programs. we have really had an opportunity to do a lot of research on our local patriots. So we have a lot of walking tours that kind of give people more insight into that. And of course, like fishing and hikes and all those things. There's something to do just about every day. So definitely worth checking out.
Very cool. Well, we wrap up the show with a segment called The Last Chapter, where we talk about a library or bookish related question. And today I wanted to ask if there was an Allison American Girl doll, what accessories would come with it, and what would the first book be about?
That is a very good question. So, she'd have to have bangs, she'd have to have glasses, just like, my hero, Molly, from younger years. She would probably wear flats and jeans that don't fit her very well because that seems to be like a plague of my life. And like a billowy shirt with a floral pattern. That is my typical. She has to have a book. That has to be one of her accessories. She needs a tote bag. Maybe she could have a microphone. I will say, people at one point did make doll models of us to help promote the show, which was very cool, and that's pretty much what
That's
they looked like.
fun.
What would I think her first story would be about wanting to save a heritage site. I think that would be cool. And she would have to probably learn a lot about bureaucracy and red tape, but she would be undaunted. I was curious if they would do a 250 character because they have a bicentennial character. And I
Oh,
think Julie is a bicentennial character. I think not, but I think that would be an interesting way to kind of give people potentially a positive perspective on the future, a little bit more kind of optimism that's grounded in reality. But that would be a positive story, and you'd have to meet me in Rhode Island. I think that would have to be a part of it. We'd have to have some of that kind of Rhode Island exceptionalism put into there. So, and she'd probably be, well, she wouldn't have a job because she'd be a child, but she would aspire, right, to work at a heritage site of some kind. So, trying to
that's
think
very
other,
cute.
yeah, I think those are. She'd have to have a, instead of a messy car, a messy bike. I think that would add a little bit of
It's
color
got a
to it as well.
basket with just like all
Yeah,
kinds of stuff in it. It's not
and the messy
organized.
tote bag. Yeah, that would feel authentic to me. So
That's great. I was thinking about a Lauren doll, and I thought because Josefina had a goat,
yes,
so mine would definitely have to have at least one cat,
yes,
um, and also a book, um, glasses, but interchangeable for sunglasses because I'm a person who like if it's overcast, I need sunglasses. Like I'm always
yeah.
wearing sunglasses, and definitely a cardigan and Chuck Taylors for the shoes. Um, and I was thinking about what my first book would be about, and it's kind of hard because, like, it wouldn't be an adult story, right?
Right,
It
right.
would be a childhood story. So I was thinking about probably like this little snippet that actually might make like a cute little story was how I first got interested in museums and history, which I ended up majoring in college. Um, I went to the Fall River Historical Society with my mom for a tour, I think probably around Christmas time because they do like special tours at that time. And they had this like mysterious third floor that was restricted. And I always wondered what was up there. And in fifth grade, we had a project to build a model of like a local building. And my friend Laura and I decided to build our model of the Fall River Historical Society so that we would have an excuse to ask them to go up to the third floor. And they let us up there. So we got to see, it was like all of my like Scooby Doo, Harry Potter dreams come true of getting let into the restricted section. And I mean, it's your standard, like it's servants' quarters is what was on the
Yeah.
third floor. So it was nothing flashy, but I remember they stored some of the clothing, the historical clothing up there that wasn't on display. And it just felt so cool to go up there. And so I guess probably the story would be of wanting to go up there and coming up with the plan to build the diorama, and then actually getting to see it and building it, and eventually becoming obsessed with history and never letting it go.
You'd have to uncover something that was not entirely age appropriate for you to fix because like the crux of the
That's
later
fair.
books. You know, Julie, as part of her bicentennial saga, like takes it upon herself to reclaim like a copy of a constitution that is circulating, or the
Wow.
declaration that is circulating, and make sure that it gets to Gerald Ford on time. That shouldn't have been on her to do, but like that's part of the books, is that there'd have to be like, you would need to uncover some structural problem
Mm,
or a termite problem in the town's beloved historical society, and you would need to fundraise, but everyone in your town would just come together for you, you know.
that's fair. That's
So
fair. Maybe, honestly thinking about it, they definitely needed climate control up there. If they're storing historical garments, it's a third floor servants' quarters. It was not climate regulated. So that maybe that's what little Lauren doll
yeah.
would be doing. She would be fundraising to install climate control on the third floor.
Your friend would have to pass out from the heat, and then
Yeah,
that would be your call to action. You know, we can never let this happen again, and you
right.
would solve the problem.
I love that. I'm gonna read it. I'm
Yeah.
definitely gonna read that book. Well, thank you so much for joining me. This has been a great chat, and it's been great to catch up with you as well.
Yes, thank you. And I'm a huge fan. I used to go to Coventry Library all the time as a kid. I lived
Oh
one
my
town
gosh.
over, but when my library didn't have a book, or if I had a research project, always a big stop at the Coventry Public Library. So,
Nice. That's great to hear. And I love hearing that the dog model is
yeah.
a Coventry, I'll say, patron.
Yes, yes, she is. Her name is Florence. She's a very good pup, and she did have to earn the badge like everybody else. So,
That's great. That's good to know. Well, thank you so much. This has been a great chat.
thank you.
Overdoing It is proud to be a resident partner of the Rhode Island Center for the Book and brought to you by library staff and community members all around the Ocean State. The project has been funded in part by the Rhode Island Office of Library and Information Services. If you'd like to share your answer to our last chapter question, send us an email at overdoingitpod@gmail.com or find us on Instagram at overdoingitpod. If you enjoyed today's episode, please rate and review us to help us reach more Rhode Islanders. Thank you for listening, and this has been another episode of Overdoing It, the Rhode Island Library Podcast. We're overdoing it, but you're doing just fine.
Yay.
The end.